Hello, I am Aurora Henry, and this is March 6th, 2013. And yesterday I went to the interdisciplinary skit thing about oppression. The skit's about oppression, where we were supposed to do some interactive learning about how to deal with oppression. The first thing we did is we went through the 4 skits that were there, and I will note that one of the skits might have been more interesting if it had been a bit longer and a little less rapping and a little bit more discussing the topic, because it basically was a tad of rapping, a little shenanigans rap, and then, oh, let's go beat up Saeed, or Tyrone as his name was. And there should have been more escalation of the relationship between Tyrone and the guy who beat him up before.
Rocco.
Yeah, I know Rocco, but I assume the guy who beat him up would be a good enough description. So Rocco and Tyrone should have had more chance to interact before Rocco just sort of did his lovely melodramatic choreographed zip zap zop thingy. You know, maybe I did Biff and Pow or something. And yeah, because really it kind of happened as they were having this thing going on. They were talking and being in their little relationship-y thingy, and then this other guy shows up. He calls him the N-word a couple of times. The guy challenges him, and he gets the crap kicked out of him for no particular reason. So I think that's probably why that one did not get very many votes, because most people were unsure what they could do in the 5 seconds before they'd have everything beat out of them. And one thing I will note about that one that was interesting, though, was that the voice of oppression was not attacking the victim of oppression, but it was actually attacking the potential ally, preventing him from feeling comfortable, you know, being an ally in that situation. Though, again, if he has like 5 minutes to do it, I'm not sure what he would have done to help resolve the situation. The other one, the one about the hospital, it was something that obviously I'm familiar with, but I also know that little old lady. And by the time you're a little old lady, you're not going to be able to be changed. So that oppressor was going to be an oppressive little old lady who didn't like dark-skinned people touching her until she croaked in her little nursing home. The doctor possibly could be changed, but it's just kind of interesting that a person of that age range would have been that dismissive of a person in that situation. And, yeah, it would have been interesting to see what could have been done with that piece, but, you know, at the same time, the potential ally was so loose and so uninvolved in the whole thing from the beginning that I think that people just didn't see where they would be able to hop in as well as they could with the other two that had more interaction between all the various characters. Since really in the one with the hospital, the potential ally said like one line, so it really was not something that was able to be easily imagined. So that left Lesbians and Liquor and the Land of Sweet Oppression. And I have to admit, or the Sweet Oppressed, whatever they were. Oppressed people standing in a customs line. And the people in the line consistently were making a mistake in that they kept wanting to immediately resolve the issue with the customs guy right there, right now. And it caused a pressure point every time. It was just not something that was going to be successful. It would probably make him more resistant because now he's being ganged up on and is not getting rid of the pressure of the guy who needs to go to his meeting. So that was why I came up with the obvious solution of, let's get rid of the older gentleman who needed to get to his business meeting, and then you have the opportunity to basically take the situation apart and allow the woman who needed a little bit of help with the paperwork to get that help, and let everyone else be dealt with. Probably if I'd actually been in that situation, when I got back to the immigration guy and the line was empty and it was just me, I probably would have looked at him and smiled and told him the life story of the young lady that he had been oppressing. Because from my experience, it's a lot easier to oppress a group, but it's a lot harder to oppress the nice young lady Cho, who's maybe her mother is now working in the area and she's very excited to be moving to America, and they are very excited to be here, and how unfortunate that her first experience in America was with a custom agent that was so restrictive and so narrow in his vision. So I probably would have gone that route if I had actually been there. As it wasn't just after I resolved the issue and Gary ran through and show was done, then I'm getting their actual names and their character names mixed together. But afterwards I would probably have stopped and talked to the TSA agent and not badgered him about the fact that he was oppressive to immigrants and in a position where he's going to spend all his time talking to them, but and not talking about it, talking to his manager. That's just going to make him dig in, because now you're just joining the crowd. But really just like putting a human face on the people he's oppressing, because I think really, and I'll repeat myself on that, that's the best way to fight oppression, is to give the oppressed a human face. So, unfortunately, I had to leave and take my son to his classes at UW, so I had to disappear, and I didn't get a chance to see much of Liquor and Lesbians. But we did discuss what he was considering doing, and various ramifications of it, and really kind of went through in our minds ways we would have approached that particular one. And there really was only a couple of scenarios that I can imagine would have worked with, because especially if you don't want to end up removing the people from the bar, or having them storm out of the bar, that really limits the potential allies' options. And I think that's one of the interesting things about that one, in that the potential ally in that case was the person that people saw had the authority. He could throw the people out. But the truth of the matter is that, most businessmen don't really have the luxury of throwing out paying customers on a regular basis, especially if maybe they're just starting or they have a very small clientele. So it's an illusionary authority at best sometimes. So really that limited him to trying to find out ways to move them apart, which I guess pouring a drink over somebody's head might have done. Or doing some form of distraction, like bringing up the call that the ref just made in the game, because usually in a bar there is a form of game going on, and you can always find some call that you don't think the ref did quite well, or you can see a touchdown, or so distract them from that early on. And probably I would have done it much earlier than pouring the drink over the head, because by that point we have the escalation. We have two oppressors now instead of just one. But obviously if he is sitting there trying to get in a relationship with her and she doesn't want it, lesbian or straight, it doesn't matter her orientation at that point. It would have been something that should have been resolved in some fashion. So probably, just getting involved in their conversation. You can't pick up a girl when some other guy is sitting there talking too. And so he would have had to drop his attempts at picking her up, and she, would have probably made the conversation less oppressive for her. Basically, almost like in the other situation, take it apart. Make it so it's no longer about trying to pick up the girl who doesn't want to be picked up. The only other approach I had for that particular scenario was to just be her, because there's no reason to wear your sexual identity on your chest. So she could have tried saying that she was tired, that she didn't really, that she had had a really long day, that she'd had a really bad day. She could have lied and said she'd just come from a funeral. There's various ways of getting rid of people without saying, "Go away, I'm a lesbian." And she seemed to be, other than the fact that she was a little taken aback with his verbiage, she seemed to be kind of not very strong in her approach either. She was kind of milquetoast, weak, not very, for a lesbian, she was not very sure of her sexual identity anyway. That might have just been because of the woman doing the caricature. But that, and I heard that later on someone else tried to do the approach of not bothering to say he was a lesbian. Unfortunately, he was a he, and it was difficult to imagine that he was a young lesbian you might want to pick up. But it would have been interesting to see that approach with a girl in that place, so that the guys could envision a person trying to pick them up. The other thing, I guess, would have been to go for it. "You want to buy me a drink? Sure. Hey, barkeep, what's the most expensive thing on the menu? He's buying." Because, you can buy me a drink. That doesn't mean I'm going home with you, or dating you, or, even having more than maybe a conversation with you. So, I guess in that case, it's whether or not you allow yourself to become oppressed. Because in that situation, she had the opportunity to not be oppressed by his attention, or be oppressed by it. When a guy says to you, "Hey, you're too pretty to be a dyke," you have the opportunity at that point to be shocked by his use of the word dyke, or to go, "Well, thank you, I've always thought I was pretty attractive myself. My girlfriend thinks so too." There's various ways you can approach that. And so I guess at that point it just really comes down to whether or not you allow yourself to be oppressed. And I guess in my experiences over the years, I've gotten over most options of oppression. I'm a scientist, I'm a female scientist, and I was also a female manager for many years, and there's a lot of opportunities in that situation to allow yourself to be oppressed and harassed and treated poorly. I mean, the whole idea of women in power, or smart women, and how they can work can sometimes go against you. But if you are willing to go with the flow and not let it bother you, I think sometimes it stops bothering you. And from the point of view of the oppressor, it's no fun to oppress people who won't be oppressed. So, anything you'd like me to add?
I can't come up with anything.
Okay, sounds good. Hey, I finally got to a slightly comfortable position where I'm facing the camera instead of the sky.
Oh, the sky's fun.
I like what you said towards the end there, that you can prevent yourself from being put in that position.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't happen right away. You have to get, I guess, practice to get to that point.
You have to get a thick skin. I guess in my case, you don't get the opportunity to, are you not quite getting around to turning me off yet? Okay, because you don't really get to the option of that. And, again, I know that the young lady who was playing the lesbian is fairly young, and not as experienced in life as, some 40-plus-year-old lady like me. So she hasn't had as many opportunities to deal with situations like that. And it's just one of those things where, when you are in that situation, you always have the option of reacting in multiple ways. And, from my experience, sometimes the best way to react is to react in the way they don't expect you to react.
Okay.
Well, hi there, son.
Now I can go get in the hot tub.
Okay, so
I goofed and put chlorine in.